Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is, of course, the Westport Museum's Tuesday Treasure program, where we go through some of the lesser seen objects in our collection. My name, as always, is Nicole Carpenter. I'm the Programs and Collections Director here at the Westport Museum for History and Culture. As always, this is a free program that we are presenting to you, but we do appreciate any donations and have a suggested donation of $5 for all of our programming to help continue to bring these streams to you. We understand this is still a very difficult time, and we appreciate whatever you can give. If you have any questions, comments, anecdotes, anything you would like to share or ask during our program, please do enter them in the comments box, and we will go through as many of those at the end as we can if we receive any. If you think of something after the live stream that you would like to ask, please do still enter that, as my staff and I do monitor these videos in case you have any questions or anything that you would like to share. This evening, we are celebrating the winter solstice, which is today, December 21st. This is the shortest day, actual daylight, of the year, making it the longest night. And I will also mention that this is only the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere is actually the spring solstice. So throughout the world, the winter solstice is celebrated in different ways. In Germanic tradition, for Germanic peoples, there is the very familiar to many of us, the Yule tradition. Many of us would know of the Yule log. There are also traditions such as Dongzhur, which is an East Asian winter solstice festival. There's also Yalda Night, which is an Iranian festival celebrated on the longest and darkest night of the year. And in all of these traditions, there is a tradition of feasting, of celebrating the harvest, and telling stories, which we will get to a story at the very end of our program tonight. There are also some other festivals such as Yulebord in Scandinavia, Kolyada, a Slavic winter festival, and an ancient Roman festival called Saturnalia, which all of us may have heard of through different history kind of programming and things like that, which is held throughout mid to late December. Some of the items that we've brought for you this evening are kind of winter-related items, and items that would relate to maybe use on the darkest night of the year, the longest night. The first object that we wanted to show you is this charcoal drawing here. It is titled Wheeler House in the Snow. As many of you may know, Wheeler House, or the Bradley Wheeler House, is the historic section, the historic house section of the museum today, which you can come and visit. This charcoal drawing was created by Hardy Gramacki. His full name is Bernhard August Hardy Gramacki, Jr., and he was an American painter, writer, author, animator, and illustrator. And in 2016, in Watercolor magazine, he was named as one of America's 20 greatest watercolorists. Now, Hardy was born in Dallas, Texas, the second of three sons, born to Bernhard Gramacki and Blanche Gunner. By 1929, he was a senior animator at Walt Disney Studios, and he remained there for 6 years. By 1932, he married Dorothea Cook, who had been his fellow student at Chouinard Art Institute. And in World War II, he worked in Hollywood producing training films for the United States Air Force. And after the World War, he moved to the East Coast and eventually settled here in Westport, Connecticut. He pursued a career as a commercial artist, producing art for Fortune, Collier's, Women's Day, True, American, and Reader's Digest. And from the 50s on, he concentrated mostly on his art career as well as writing and illustrating. One of, or actually his most popular work that he ever produced was Little Toot, a series all about this tiny little tugboat. His last book, Little Toot and the Loch Ness Monster, was unfinished at the time of his death. But following the 50th anniversary of the character Little Toot, The story was completed by his wife and daughter, Dorothea and Linda Gromacki Smith, and it was published in 1989. Now, this piece, of course, shows our property in the snow, and it depicts this kind of, I would like to think of it as a lovely little winter scene of the house in snow, as well as some of the cars on Main Street. This is a view that, of course, we can still see today if it would snow in Connecticut. The second piece that we'd like to show you this evening is also a piece of artwork. This is a painting, however. We believe that this is an acrylic painting, and it is signed. It is signed by an S. Northey Nict. Now, this name is unfamiliar to us. This painting is dated 2004, and it does have, it does not have a title. And this is one of the pieces in our collection that we would love to know more about. If you know anything about this artist, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We would love to know more about this piece and more about the person who created it. But nonetheless, this painting does depict Main Street, namely the former Tavern on Main restaurant, in this very festive time of year. And it shows all of these families and individuals walking around in downtown, enjoying some of the businesses that were available on Main Street in the 2000s. So if you have any information, please do share it with us. We would love to know more about this piece. The next item that I have for you is quite small, and I will show you in a bit more detail. This is our smallest item tonight, which you may have noticed here on the table. This is a recent acquisition of the museum. It was actually just formally taken into our collection this year in 2021. This, of course, is a matchbox. It does contain red phosphorus matches. But on this side, you can see this lovely season's greetings salutation. But on the other side, it contains a very familiar business name. This is a matchbox for the Westport Bank and Trust. The bank itself was founded by Horace Staples, of course, the namesake of today's Staples High School. He founded the bank in 1852. He founded the high school in 1884, the original structure. And the original bank was actually housed in today's National Hall, the brick building that you will recognize just across the river. But in 1924, a local architect, Charles E. Cutler, actually designed a building specifically for the bank. This is a classical revival brick structure, and today it houses Patagonia at 87 Post Road East. If you go into this building today, you will still see the 14-ton bank vault door just behind the counter. Now, the bank remained in this building until December 14th of 1996, when it merged with the Lafayette American Bank and Trust Company out of Bridgeport, and it no longer existed. But this matchbox, which you can see, and again, it has this wonderful little season's greetings on the opposite side, was a promotional piece that the bank created probably in the 50s or 60s. And of course, it exists still in our collection today. We thought this might be a nice addition, not only for its season's greeting salutation, but also if it was used in conjunction with the last item that we will show you tonight. The final piece that I have for you here on the table is a candle holder, sometimes called a courting candle. Now, the legend has told us that courting candles were used to raise, and I will show you here, to raise or lower a candle, which you can see can be done here, this kind of spiral apparatus. If you raise it quite high, more of your candle shows. And if you place it lower, of course, less of the candle shows, and it will actually burn itself out. The legend goes that a young suitor would come to a home in the colonial period, and the amount of time that he had to uh, kind of fraternize with the young daughter of the home would be measured by this candle that the father would actually set the height of this according to the amount of time that he wanted the suitor to spend with his daughter. Now, this is debated on whether it is factual or not, but regardless, we do know that candles like this were used in colonial homes through the 17th and 18th centuries, extending even so far into the 1800s. But we also know that candles were very expensive. Most households used a fat lamp, kind of a shallow dish with a wick in it to burn for their light source. And we know that candles were very labor intensive and hence very expensive. So while these pieces do exist from the colonial period, they were probably used very seldom. And they may have been used to kind of measure this time with a lover. But the last thing that I wanted to leave you with this evening is very much in the tradition of the winter solstice. This is not something that is held in our collection, and it is a very short story that I thought I would share with you all. Again, many of the festivals that celebrate this longest night of the year celebrate by feasting and being surrounded by family and listening to stories. So the story that I thought I would read to you all, a very condensed version, I will say, is the story of Frigga and the mistletoe. And this is, of course, from the Norse kind of mythos and myths and their body of stories. So the story goes, long ago in ancient times, Frigga, the goddess of beauty, love, and marriage, and the wife of the powerful Odin, known from the Marvel movies, not quite the same Odin, sat working at her loom on the night of the winter solstice. This was the time of year when she worked the longest and the hardest. And this was also the time of year that she gave birth to her beloved son, Balder. Now, one of Frigga's many gifts and strengths was telling the future. She could not tell the future to others. She could not tell them their fate, but she could see the future. She also looked after many of the animals, and it is said that she wove the clouds, creating rain and thunderstorms, and she also wove the fates and hence knew their futures. And what she saw of Balder's future was that he was to die a young man. And this, of course, upset her greatly, but she couldn't tell him. So what she did instead was went to all of the animals, all of the plants. She went to all of the metals, all of the known poisons. She went to everything and anything across the earth and had them promise that no one would harm her beloved Balder. And they all did. The gods all noticed this, and they commented that Balder was the safest among them. And to amuse themselves, they would throw sticks and stones at him, and he would walk away unharmed, as none of them would hurt him. This became a favorite sport among the gods. They would all do this as he walked by, and it eventually became a way to honor the young god. Now, Loki, who many of us recognize that name, was a mischievous god, and he watched this and became terribly jealous. He came up with the idea of finding something that would actually hit Balder. So he wrapped himself in a disguise and went to Frigga's palace, Fensalir. And he asked her, actually stated to her that he feared for Balder's safety, disguised as an old woman, of course. And of course, Frigga said, I've made everything and everyone promise not to harm him. And Loki questioned this and said, this can't be possible. There has to be something. Everyone promised, he asked. And Frigga said, everyone has, except for a tiny plant growing on the eastern side of Valhalla. But it is so young and weak, it could not hurt Balder. The moment that Loki heard this, he ran off, assumed his normal, natural form, and he found the tiny mistletoe growing on a tree. And he cut a branch and he brought it to the sacred playing fields where all of the gods assembled. And when he was there, he found the god of winter, Hodor. And he went to his side and he said, why don't you join in and throw this branch that I've made for you at Balder? And Hodor, who was blind, took this invitation, and Loki guided his hand. And Loki had sharpened this stick to a point, and it did indeed cast and hit Balder, and it pierced his skin, which shocked everyone. Now the sky turned pale, and the world stood still, and everyone began to grieve as Balder began to die. And Frigga, hearing these, came to the field, and she wept and wept. And it said that for 3 days, everyone and everything tried to heal Balder, and Frigga wept. And it said that her tears turned into the white berries that grow upon mistletoe. It is also said that Frigga placed these berries on Balder's chest, and he healed. And so they say that Frigga praised the mistletoe for this, and it became a symbol of peace and love. And she promised that whoever stood beneath the plant would be offered a kiss and forever protected. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a happy holiday.